Hi, this is Teddy, and today you're listening to Aimy Steele in North Carolina on Two Broads Talking Politics.
Are you listening?
Hi everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, and I'm on today with Aimy Steele, who is running for the North Carolina House in District 82, and is a fellow podcaster. So hi, Aimy.
Hi, how are you, Kelly?
I'm great. I'm super excited to talk to you. So I have lots of questions about North Carolina and the district, but let's start with just a little bit about you. Can you give us just a little intro about you and why you're running for the North Carolina House?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you for this opportunity to come on your show. I am Aimy Steele, as you mentioned. I'm running for the North Carolina House of Representatives in District 82, which for those who are not quite familiar with North Carolina geography, it is close to Charlotte, North Carolina. So about 2 hours south of Raleigh, but about 10 minutes north of Charlotte. So we are here in this great state, and it is a swing state. So we're super excited about that. But essentially, my background is in public education. I am a former Spanish teacher and school principal. So I've been a principal in elementary school, middle school, and an assistant principal in high school. However, I've taught from 2-year-olds all the way to high school seniors. So that's quite exciting in terms of my experience. 2-year-olds are very fun. My other background is that I've grown up in a military family. So I've traveled all around the world and was first introduced to the Department of Defense school system at the age of 8 years old in Sagamihara, Japan. So a lot of my experience stems from my interactions with military-based schools, and a lot of schools at that. At one point, I attended about 5 schools in 6 years, or 6 schools in 5 years. I get it confused, but a lot of schools nonetheless. So I grew up with a love for public education. So that's my background in general. From a family perspective, I do have 5 children. I'm the mom of 5 amazing kids that all came out of my body. And I like to say that because people are like, there's no way you actually have 5 kids. And I'm like, yeah, it's true. And there are many people who have
trust me.
Yes, many people who have way more kids than I do. But yes, mom of 5, wife to my husband, Michael, who, we've been married for 21 years and we're on this journey of life together. So that's my background.
Excellent. So North Carolina is a swing state, as you mentioned. Lots of important races going on. Of course, the presidential race. North Carolina could be the tipping point state, could be the tipping point in the U.S. Senate. But this district within this state is also one of the very flippy districts. So tell me a little bit about the district and what you see going on in it. And this should be one of the best chances in the whole country to flip a state legislative seat.
Yes. So what we have faced in North Carolina in general is a terrible case of gerrymandering. Gerrymandering was so precise and so explicit that legislators drew maps that literally went down a street, grabbed one house for one district, and then all the other neighbors on the street went to another district. So the judge declared that the maps had been drawn with surgical precision. So the maps were ordered to be redrawn, both congressionally and from a state legislative perspective. And so my particular district, which I ran in the same district for the same office back in 2018, it was about an R11, between an R9 and an R11 at one point, but it was a red district. And it's pretty urban, ex-urban, lots of density housing, areas that were very dense, but it also had a taste of rural America. Lots of rural areas within the district, but lots of growth and development as well. And the county as a whole is divided into 3 different House districts, 1 Senate district, but for the state rather. But those 3 House districts were so different. I mean, they're very different. And my district happened to be the one that is on the northwestern side. And so in 2018, it was terribly gerrymandered. In 2020, it's only mildly gerrymandered, but it's still, drawn in a way that favors, one person over the other. So that's essentially what the district looked like. In terms of voting registrants, about 69% of all registered voters in my district are Caucasian, about 22% are Black, and 5% Latinx, and all the rest are other of some sort, The district is pretty evenly split in terms of Republicans and Democrats, but we have a large percentage of undecided voters. And so that's where the just the range and who's showing up for the election actually matters. So that's what we're experiencing.
Yeah. And in the primaries in March, more Democrats turned out than Republicans in this district.
Yes, that is the case. And we like to think that was because people were very excited, and people are showing a sense of excitement, but we also were calling people like crazy. We were knocking doors. We were, really going after the voters and saying, hey, we're here. Remember, we came to your house in 2018. Now we're back to say hello. There's another election, so don't forget about us. And I think the voters made sure they showed up and demonstrated, that they wanted their voices heard.
And of course, you haven't been able to go door to door this year because of the pandemic, but you have this great door knocking video. Can you tell me a little bit about how that came about and how you're sharing it, how you're making sure that people are seeing that video?
Absolutely. So one of the most amazing things about this cycle is that we've increased our digital mark more so than ever before. And so we're able to really get to our voters and find them where they are on their devices, right? And we know that about 70% of digital or usage of digital devices has increased about 70% since COVID. And so what we did was in one of my video shoots, when we were discussing kind of what messaging did we want to commit this fall, because we know that COVID is here and we're not going to be able to knock doors like we did in 2018. And we knocked about 18,000 different times on doors. So we had an aggressive grassroots effort in 2018. So in discussion with my very fabulous digital marketing consultant, we came up with, what would you say to voters who were new to your district? Because the district had been gerrymandered and the district had been redrawn. So because of that, I had at least 12 new precincts of voters whom I've never met before, maybe from being their child's principal or teacher, but essentially I've never met them before from a voting perspective. So she asked me to look straight into the camera and say, what would I say, or say what I would say to those voters if I were showing up at their door. So I became very excited and I just knocked at their door as if I was knocking on their door for real. And that was the creation or the beginning of the creation of the Knock Knock video. So what we did was we actually sent that video from a digital marketing perspective to all of the voters in that district. And we were able to see almost 10,000 full views of that video, although we had only targeted about 8,200 voters whom we had information for. So what we know is that the video was watched multiple times by the same people because we only targeted 8,200 unique voters. So that's what we've done. We've used it to circulate through digital means and of course on Facebook and Twitter and all those normal spaces. So it's got some traction. We're in the 100,000s now. So super excited about that video.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Life throws you pandemic and and you get creative. I like it.
That's right.
So education is always a super important topic, of course, but I think the pandemic has just highlighted how uneven our education is across the country, but even across within states, how, any gaps that we have in our education are just exacerbated by the situation we're in. So tell me what you would like to do with your education background, bringing that to the State House in Raleigh, what you would like to have the state legislature doing to really address some of the challenges in education right now in North Carolina.
Yeah, so that's a great question and thought. The main thing I want to do is make sure educators are at the table when making education-related decisions. There are many educators vying for a seat in the State House this fall. And so, they range from high school teachers to elementary teachers to people who work in workforce development, people who are school leaders, and superintendents. And we need to utilize all those voices at the table to make appropriate laws for North Carolina. The other thing we need to do is we need an overhaul of our curriculum. And thankfully, I have a PhD in curriculum and instruction. So there's this notion that, people who do work in curriculum need to help build the new curriculum along with other experts from across our state. There are some unique things and challenges about the North Carolina state curriculum that we need to fix and address. But I want to use my experience in working in urban schools and suburban schools, Title I schools and non-Title I schools to really bring a valued perspective to Raleigh so we can turn the tide on some things that we should have done years ago. There are also some definite changes we need to make in broadband access, and it needs to come from an educational perspective along with the infrastructure of utilities within our state. And so working together collaboratively with those partners in facilities and management of, resources and utilities and all of those types of things, that's what I want to bring to the state house. And that's something that teachers and educators are very familiar with. So that's the unique value I'll bring. That's, a portion of it. And I want to make sure that's something that we work on when I'm elected to State House.
Yes, when. And so another big issue in your district right now is the opioid crisis. It's hit a lot of parts of the country hard, but especially in your county. Can you talk some about what that looks like on the ground and what you hope to do to address that?
Yeah. So what it looks like on the ground from a very practical perspective is it looks like, schools manifest problems that are in society. And so it looks like kids being taken from their parents' homes because the parents are addicted to opioids. After having been prescribed opioids for various pain or pain management that they experienced, either from a surgery or from a past injury or something of that nature. And so what we need to do is we actually need to slow down the prescription of opioids. And when I say slow down, I mean in a particular district and area within North Carolina, opioid prescriptions are among some of the highest in the entire nation. And that's ridiculous. That also tells us that we need to find some alternative forms of pain management that are accepted by insurance companies so people feel comfortable trying other things and doing other things. I'm not saying, obviously, that opioids are never the right prescription. They are in some cases. But when you have them being prescribed at levels that don't make sense, according to experts who have researched this, then we need to take a look at how they're being prescribed. So we need more accountability in the area of pharmaceuticals and doctors prescribing opioids at such a high and alarming rate in North Carolina, particularly in Cabarrus County and in the Congressional District 8. When we see that oversight increase, I think we'll start to see less cases of opioid abuse and opioid crises, which result in death. After having been a principal, dealing with the Department of Social Services, dealing with the displacement of children out of their parents' homes after having found them in their homes on the floor, literally almost dead, but not quite. That's something that I'm very sensitive to because when you deal with the children who are victims of the opioid crisis, it makes you keenly aware of what needs to change. And you don't do, wrong to the children of our nation because they will grow up and take care of us one day. So we must do right by those children.
So talk to me about voting in North Carolina. We're seeing early voting starting all over the country and just lines everywhere. I live on the south side of Chicago where there's no question, who will get the vote. And there are lines here too, out the door, people voting. So, what sort of early voting do you have in North Carolina? What does that look like? Are people excited to vote there?
Yes, I would say based on my experience today, people are ecstatic. So today, I was, as a candidate, always voting early on the first day. And so In North Carolina, the first day of voting, early voting was today, October 15th, all the way through Halloween, through October 31st. And literally in my county, Cabarrus County, the polls are open every single day, both Sundays, both Saturdays, just every day until the 31st. And that is exciting. Well, not only that, but what I saw was a long line of people who were willing and ready and able to wait and wait and wait so they could cast their vote anxiously, right? I think people have been cooped up in their homes and they were just ready to get out and cast their votes. Those lines are also very consistent across North Carolina, across small districts, small counties, and larger counties. In urban areas, rural areas, just every type of area you can imagine. People are literally waiting in line for hours. We waited for almost 3 hours. And so I know the excitement is there and we're seeing that. So it's oh my gosh, it's so exhilarating. But I literally got in line at 7:55, was out of line at about 10:40, and was able to, help my family because they had some other challenges with their ballot, and we were able to get that taken care of. But it was so exciting. And people showed up. They were just lines and lines. There were lines and lines. And I will tell you this, so I got in line 5 minutes before they opened. I was number 253 when I voted. That's how many people were in line. And it opened at 8 a.m., but the line had already circled the parking lot of the hotel where we had our early voting.
Oh my gosh.
Can you believe that?
I wish that our voting was done in a way that was more efficient so that people didn't have to wait so long. But I love that people are willing to wait so long, and that there's such an air of excitement around it.
Yes.
So we have 2.5 weeks until the final day of voting, as we're calling it now, not election day, the final day of voting. And so how can our listeners help you get the word out about your campaign? What can we be doing in these final weeks to make sure that you do win this seat?
We have one strategy, Kelly, and that is flushing people out of their homes. We need them to show up like the mice in Ratatouille. And so as a mom, I've watched Ratatouille probably 800 times, and as I'm sure you have, and I've memorized it, right? And so you remember when it was time for the, Jacques or whatever his name was to show up and cook. And he literally, his whole staff had quit, and it was time for all of these people to show up to eat. And he had no staff in the kitchen. So all of the mice came in and, they all got sanitized and they, washed the dishes, washed their hands, etc. And then they started working. That's what we need for the campaign. We need to literally flush people out of their home, and it's going to be an all on deck strategy. That strategy looks like this: calling people who haven't voted yet. And so we're able to produce lists every night at about 3 a.m. of all the voters who have voted and haven't voted. And so we're just going to continue to call them every day. Like, hey, don't forget, what's your plan to vote? When are you going to vote? And we know we're going to see great numbers tonight through tomorrow based on the lines we're seeing in media, in media's coverage of the lines today across North Carolina. But we literally need people to help us flush people out of their homes. And you can do that by signing up to Virtually Phone Bank. You can also donate. If you don't want to talk to people on the phone, guess what? Someone else does. Help us find them and help us pay them a small stipend so that they can make calls on your behalf. And it's a 2-for-1. You get to donate and you get to take credit for someone making phone calls. The other thing is, come on down to North Carolina. If you want to make the drive south, guess what? The weather's great. It was 75 degrees today. Not too cold, no rain. It was great weather. Come help us put some literature on people's doors who haven't voted yet so they can have some material to go to the polls and make sure they vote. All of those strategies help. But as RBG gave her life for democracy, and she worked up until the last day of her life on this earth, we can do more. Just as she did, we can do more. So what more are you willing to do so you can have the outcome you desire on November 4th? It's time out for saying, oh, these people don't care about me, or these people are this, or these people are that. Well, guess what? You're these people if you sit at home and do nothing. So don't be these people. Be the kind of people that act and that work until the work is done. In the military, my dad used to, always, well, we have several sayings in our home. But the one that I remember is be mission focused. It's always about the mission. And this mission is making sure you as listeners and me as a candidate, that we have the positive outcome. Whatever it takes to get that done is what you need to do now, however that looks for you. So those are my suggestions, but please align yourself with what works for you.
And be strong like steel.
And be strong like steel. Kelly, I love it. You've done your research, girl.
I actually wrote some postcards for you.
You did?
I did. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Excellent. I love, bringing RBG into the conversation. We have such amazing women to look up to right now. RBG, Kamala Harris
yes.
is our vice presidential candidate that I am so excited to vote for. So I think it's all really exciting, and I hope that it continues to be, and that of course we need to get through November 3rd and get you and Biden and Kamala and everyone elected. But then we need to keep paying attention.
That's right.
And keep moving forward after the election day. Absolutely.
And I'm definitely in support of all efforts to make sure we pay attention to our midterms. Right after this November election, it's going to be a long marathon, right? But we're not done. We have a sprint of 2019 midterms for local and state elections, and we've got to pay attention to those as well. So the fight continues.
Yeah, you can take a nap for like a day and then and then we're fighting again.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Amy, is there anything else that you'd like to make sure we talk about?
I just want to say, I was on a call earlier today or a Facebook Live, and, what I encouraged the listeners to do was to find their purpose and act in it and live in it. And that's what you have to do. In this moment, everyone is experiencing something. It's either utter excitement or utter anxiety, or a little bit of depression or a little bit of insanity in terms of how they feel about COVID and all of life being just upended from the old normal to a new normal that we didn't agree to, right? While you're feeling all these ways, channel that energy into something positive. Find your new purpose in this moment and feel and live in this moment. Don't think about what's going to happen in 15 days, what's going to happen in 25 days. Just be here, be present in this moment. Because regardless of what happens in 15 or 20 days, your actions or your outcomes in 15 or 20 are predicated upon what you do today. So live right now in this moment, feel this moment, be in this moment, and find your purpose for this moment. And then worry about the next moment when the next moment comes. Now, that doesn't mean don't plan anything. It just means don't overly obsess about what's going to happen. That unknowing sense is what drives people crazy. And you really have to take a moment, take a deep breath, get some self-care rolled into your daily routine, and be in the moment you're in. And I've had to tell myself this every day because as a candidate, we literally, I get anxiety waking up thinking about how I can't knock doors, Mm-hmm. So I understand, I feel it as well. But we must be in the moment. So I've had to tell myself the same thing. And that's what I'll leave our audience with today.
Thank you. That is a wonderful way to end. And thank you so much for joining me. This was a great, really hopeful and exciting conversation. So I hope people will listen in and get inspired. I'm feeling inspired right now. So
awesome, Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at Two Broads Talk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.